picks up noise.
Yeah, it does. Tracks the voices. Yeah. Down plays with it a little bit too.
Yeah, so there's Joe. So you're all set, Gordon.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to start us off?
After you.
You don't need me to unmute, correct, Don?
You're okay.
Okay. Beautiful. Well, welcome, everybody. This is the May 25th meeting of the East Longmeadow High School Building Committee. We're excited to be here with you this afternoon, starting right at 3:45. And I think we're going to start with welcome and introductions. We have some people who are online. I think Mr. Fenney's online and Mr. Dunn is online joining us. We'll bring them in shortly. And we'll go around the table and introduce ourselves. And I'll be able to take attendance as we do so. Start with Mr. Crucial, our chair.
Stephen Crucial, I'm the chair of the building committee.
And I'm Pamela Blair, the Assistant Superintendent for Business for the school district and MCPPO for the project.
Elizabeth Marcin Boucher, I'm on the school committee.
Kathy Hill, I'm the town council representative to this committee.
I'm Jill DeTorsi with Jones Whitsett Architects.
Ben Murphy with Skanska, the owner's project manager.
Christian Whitsett, an architect, also with Jones Whitsett Architects.
Ellen Fantini, project manager with SMMA.
Lori Brooks, project architect with Jones Whitsett Architects.
And Gregory Thompson, school committee member.
Okay, and we have Mr. Dunn on screen. Mr. Dunn, if you want to just introduce yourself quickly.
Sure, Joe Dunn, Building Facilities Manager for the town.
Beautiful, thank you. And we have Mr. Fenney on screen as well.
Yep, Bruce Fenney, Superintendent Public Works.
All right, welcome. Was everyone able to retrieve the minutes? Everybody has those? Okay. And any questions on those? Or actually, before we even go there, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 16th?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Crucial. Any seconds?
I'll second.
And second by Mr. Marcin Boucher. All right. Any questions on those? Okay. I'm going to do a roll call vote then. We'll start with our two gentlemen on screen. Mr. Fenney?
I'm going to have to abstain. I was not at the last meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Yes, yes to approve.
Yes to approve. Okay. I'm a yes. Mr. Crucial?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Margin, I'm sorry, Mrs. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Margin Boucher?
Yes.
And Ms. Hill?
Yes.
And going around, and Mr. Lonergan just showed up. Beautiful. We're looking at the minutes from last time, which are at your place.
Yep. I reviewed them.
Okay. Would you vote to approve?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
He's a yes. And going all the way down, what am I missing? Mr. Thompson, were you with us last time? You were. Okay. So I think that becomes, with all the yeses, we have approved the minutes and we can move forward in our agenda. Oh, I apologize. Mr. Lonergan, Steve Lonergan, our finance director for the town, joined us. And even though I just introduced you, do you want to introduce yourself?
What did he say? I'm Steve Lonergan, I'm the finance director for the town.
Thank you for joining us. And so that moves us into an update from our owner project manager, Skanska.
Thank you very much, everyone. And the main intention of today is to go through, just kind of recap where we're at with the project and then get into hopefully more of the procedural follow-up and shed some light on the overall process. But I did find it important for us to take a break. Slide here, Christian. Bear with us a second. I just wanted to recap, now that we do have a designer on board, I wanted to just show the overall structure of our project team at this point in time. So the team who will be bringing this feasibility study home, at the top, you'll see the Mass School Building Authority, or MSBA for short. And so that's the state funding agency who will be your partner throughout this project. Below them, and there's no particular order here, but the owner's project manager, that's us, Skanska. So we'll be the liaison between the town and MSBA. Will help oversee this entire project for you. And then below that, you'll see yourselves, East Longmeadow School Building Committee, representative of the district. So how you'll MSBA and obviously the district at whole will have a say. There will be many committees, community groups that we will meet with, and a lot of different feedback that we'll get. But as far as the determinations and who MSBA sees as the determining party it is this committee here. A lot of the approvals, submissions do need to be blessed by you and approved before we go through with anything in this process. So kudos to you guys. And then last but certainly not least, we do have the design team of Jones Witsit Architects in association with Sims Mania McKee. These fine folks here, and they're an integral part. They allow us to kind of get going here, to get started on this feasibility study. So that being said, we'll give you just an overview of where we're at with the schedule. All right, and so we were tasked with, any project, and you need to start a schedule, you need to start somewhere. This could be a very long project, so we had to take some assumptions. And so that being said, this is just my disclaimer that as we get towards the bottom of this graphic, these aren't dates that are set in stone. We do need to go through studies. The project and the scope could change many times. So please don't get this in your mind and just stick to this for forever. So if you take a look at the top, this project actually became a project 3 years ago, pre-COVID, when the statement of interest was accepted by MSBA. And ultimately in the same year, the town was invited into the feasibility program. So if you follow along down to module 2, forming the project team, one of the first steps of feasibility study is to bring an owner's project manager on board. And we were pleased and blessed to be chosen. And now as soon as we got on board, and I think we met with you folks back in March, I want to say, when we were just starting that designer selection process.
January and March, I believe.
Was it January and March we met? So what we focused on as soon as we were brought on board was basically advertising for a designer. And there's checks and balances in the state with the procurement laws and everything as to how the durations that you need to set forth for all of that. So we went through all that with the town. And then when we met with you folks, if you recall, we assembled a designer application review subcommittee, which was comprised of 4 individuals. It was Beth, Gordon, Steve, and Joe were good enough to volunteer some of their time. And it really is a big time commitment, because after that we received 9 submissions, all from reputable design firms. And so for each submission, we need to look through and take in all of the information, digest it. We need to check references to make sure that all these designers are actually approved and satisfactory for this project. So at the end of that, the group decided that although all 9 firms were capable of designing this project, the most preferable, most advantageous one, I think is the way we put it, was these folks. So that said, there's still a few other pieces I wanted to bring you up to speed on. We had the designer selection panel, which we needed to then go. These folks, Steve, Beth, Gordon, and Joe made their recommendation to them. Steve, Gordon, and Beth all volunteered to be voting representatives on the Massachusetts School Building Authority designer selection panel, which is comprised of 16 people in total. So that's 3 of the 16. So our first meeting was held on March. Yeah, a little bit fair. But on March 22nd, we met with the panel at large, and these folks were able to get their thoughts and findings out in the open, as were all the other panel members. And at the end of that, they took a vote. And at the end of the vote, you guys were at the top right there. It was decided that we should go ahead and interview 3 shortlisted firms for the project, just to hear what they're all want, their different ideas and thoughts on the project. And so we regrouped on April 5th, I believe it was, for the actual interviews. And so the interviews took place, a vote took place at the end, and I won't waste any more time. Here we have it, the design team. So from there, we're where we are at now, starting up with the with the preferred design program. And just let me breeze through this. I promise you these folks will do a lot more to explain what each of these activities are. We are targeting a submission of the preferred design program this August. Oh, I'm just reading off screen. I'm sorry. Preliminary, yes, preliminary design program, which leads us into our preferred schematic report, and which we're hoping to round out and have submitted by January 2023 with a board approval date in March of next year. So those are the dates that we kind of know of now. Like I said, from there on, we put some projections, and we have schematic design happening from March 2023 to October 2023. And then that, once we do have a successful completion of the schematic design on the project, then comes time for funding the project. You have your scope and budget all approved by MSBA. At that point, we will go to the town to vote to hopefully fully, or to appropriate all of the funds for the project. And you'll see from there, that kind of just gives all of us the approval to go forward and build out our design, the documents for the project. And then, yeah, we have construction targeted as of right now, should this project go that way, in July of 2024, lasting just over 2 years. So that's it for this slide. And I believe the next one is really just a more detailed version showing you some of those very critical activities that take place in each one of these modules. And the "you are here" just kind of gives you a few blocks of what we're looking at next. And I think that's a good lead into what you guys have to say. So I'll kick it over to you. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us, and we're so thrilled to be here. As Ben was saying, there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get here, but to be in front of the school building committee is really, that's wonderful, because this is where the decisions happen. So we thought, as a way of both introducing our firm and our partnership with SMMA, and also just to give everyone on the building committee a feel for how the interview went, we would go through that rather quickly today. And it's also an opportunity for us to show some of our initial thoughts on the project, and even, if possible, get some input from you all today, which would be great. As we say during the interview presentation, it's really hard for us to start thinking about options or designing solutions in a vacuum. We haven't met with the faculty yet. We haven't met with the school building committee yet. We haven't met with any community members. And that's what we need to really influence the design, inform the design. But we also want to show some of our initial design thinking and capture your attention and capture the MSBA's attention. So we do our best to come up with a few options, and we find that that can sometimes be a really helpful jumping off point, where sometimes the building committee can react very negatively to some of those options that we've come up with, and that's great too, because it just helps us refine the process. So we'll kind of go through our presentation in a more informal manner, if you guys don't mind. We don't want to kind of go through our canned presentation language that we
Which was a half an hour long.
which we practiced over and over and over again before presenting.
It didn't seem canned.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
So again, yeah, about 30 slides. And so I opened up it, we were presenting, it was via Zoom, which is also adds to the nerves and makes it difficult, but we were presenting from SMMA's conference room, which is actually really helpful to have our design team together. So it was the three of us here, Dorian, Helen, and myself. Eric, who I was walking around the school with today, our landscape architect, was there. Lorraine, who is a principal at SMMA, was on the interview as well. And who else did we have?
Oldman.
Oh, right, Andy Oldman, a mechanical engineer.
And just also to add that Eric is an alumni of the school, which we think probably, a little bit of extra
I
power.
think you actually mentioned that, right?
A little reunion with Mark Bell and
He
others
was,
today.
he was beaming in the entire interview, so.
He was.
What's Eric's last name?
Bangsness.
You remember.
Do you know? All right.
Great. So we opened the interview just talking a little bit about East Longmeadow in particular and the school, and really kind of the amazing amount of programs that it offers, the AP percentage rate, the amount of varsity sports that it offers. It's really pretty remarkable for a school of 800 students, and talking a little bit about the community as well, and that it's a growing community, that it's obviously a community that families are drawn to. And then from there, we dove a little bit more into the partnership and why we formed this partnership for this project in particular.
So in fact, we've been in partnership before on several projects. So SMMA and Jones Whitsitt worked on the study back in 2013. And I personally worked with these fine people at Jones Whitsitt some years back and was on the team that did. We were focusing on the elementary schools at the time, SMMA, the high school. So this is a very long-standing relationship. In addition, JWA and SMMA have done other projects together. We are a proven team. We have many of the same values. This slide just is to illustrate. You see three of us here this afternoon. But as Christian mentioned, Lorraine and Phil were also part of the initial study in 2013. Will remain part of the SMMA team, the SMMA JWA team. Phil is our educational programmer. He would be here this week doing these meetings. He had a health issue. So I've been working with Dory and Jill interviewing your amazing teachers and staff. And finally, another person you will be seeing soon, at least again in this part of the feasibility studies, David Stephen with New Vista Design. He is our educational visioning consultant, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. Beyond that slide, this is a very deep team. It's the MSBA requires you to have all the disciplines covered, and that's another nice piece about this partnership. SMMA does have many disciplines in-house. We've got mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection. So as well as our site design team, civil engineering and landscape architecture. So again, we feel like this is a tight team. We know each other well. We've worked together for a long time. Next. And this is just to illustrate our combined experience across the state. Just reminding the MSBA as well as the town that we have the qualifications. These are all of our projects that either are completed or are currently under design at this point in time.
Nice to see all the Western Mass ones.
Yes, absolutely. And again, as I said, we share the same values. Our buildings, are about the human experience. It's not about the exterior image of the structure. And so everything we learn from our clients, we try to translate into buildings that speak to the community. No two are alike. They're all unique. We feel they are healthy and vibrant and cost effective. And I think one of these is Templeton, another project that we collectively have done, completed not too long ago together. Next. And so some of what I talked about in the interview was about community engagement. So from the get-go, we've heard nothing but how important this building is as a community resource. Schools are community resources. However, high schools in particularly are, and this community has been speaking loud and clear. Even this little bit that we've been speaking with you, but how important it is that this project is a community resource. So we're going to get to know you more through meetings, through being at town events. National Night Out is already targeted as a time where we can talk to people and bring them through the building. If people haven't been, if they've, grown up here and haven't been in the building in some time, it's a good opportunity to see it again. Why are we doing this? So we will be very present over the next several months. And part of that is, using a website, which I think Victoria is really going to dig into more. But we will, again, be as transparent as possible with the information we gather and the communications that we are having with you.
So I'm going to pretend to be David Stephen for a second. David is a visioning specialist for the team, and as Helen mentioned, he'll be here in the early phase of the project. And part of what David's doing is helping the community to kind of get outside of the school as it currently exists and envision something different by sharing information about pedagogy and where schools have been moving, what schools are doing currently, trying to get the priorities for the district out and on the table. And in that process, we'll be working not only with teachers and staff, but also with the community as a whole. And that's a really important two-way conversation that really helps to define the values. As Helen said, every project we do is defined by the values of the community that we're working with. We don't just repeat a project based on a previous project, but we do have a lot of expertise and experience to bring. So this conversation initially is helpful to share some of that information back and forth and try and gather your aspirations. And we will work to involve both leadership, teachers, parents, students, but also key shared use agencies, organizations that will be using the site, whether it be the seniors center or recreational programs or the community at large, as well as the general community who may not use the site but are key stakeholders because they're helping to pay for the project. So all of those players are important. The process, again, starts somewhat narrow with conversations that we'll be doing through both the Zoom and in-person community forums here. But we also know that as the progress of the project proceeds, there will be opportunities for us to reach out and work with community groups outside to share information about the project. But we really have decided on this project that we want to engage the community early on, so that we don't bring the project to them at a later stage of design and have community members feel that they weren't a part of the process. And to some degree, that's challenging because the process does sort of push you a certain way, but we're really foregrounding the project in community engagement early, and we'll be with you all the way through the vote and getting information out. We've already started some of this visioning work. We had a leadership visioning session in which we tried to learn a little bit more about the district's priorities. And you see on the right some common themes and messages that we hear about education, and the ones that are highlighted in yellow are those that were actually foregrounded in our conversation by this district's leadership, talking about student-centered learning, fully inclusive learning, where all students of different learning types are acknowledged and supported throughout their individual paths. Universal design for learning, which we've been speaking a lot about with staff recently, and then a community connected school. Those are the things that stood out quite heavily, but also, project-based learning is a part of the learning process here. And then there are, as we've mentioned, programs that really allow students to dig into STEAM and STEM, arts and phys ed are also very heavy programs here that we have talked a lot about. So these are some of the concepts that we'll talk more about in the visioning sessions. We'll talk.
Do you want questions as you go?
Sure.
Can you say a couple words about the universal design?
So universal design is, as somebody said the other day, some of these concepts are concepts that repeat in the history of education. Universal design is really speaking to providing more options to students to engage them. So rather than having a set curriculum everybody must follow, to provide a sort of scaffolded access to engage students, but along a spectrum of choice, so that they're more motivated by their selections. They're giving them a little bit more autonomy over that. I'd say that's how I would somewhat describe it.
It's removing barriers so that you're not force feeding the curriculum one way, which may shut certain learners down. I'm sure.
It actually comes from architecture. So you think about having a ramp, anybody can use the ramp. So, you build these things in place so that anybody can access it, and we're not trying to find kids and react, but be proactive.
Thank you. Way to bring it back in.
We wanted to share a few diagrams that just show our awareness of the challenge of this project as a potential renovation, addition, or new construction. So historically, this is a building that's grown over time, and you certainly get to know it really quickly when you walk around the building. You can see the eras of it, and this just really reflects that. And then we'll also, as a part of our early process, be really exploring where spaces are undersized and oversized, which is inevitable when changing educational approaches occur. You can't imagine a building built in the 1950s is actually going to meet the needs of today. So these colors reflect MSBA's guidelines and relate to how spaces are reimbursed by the MSBA. And that's an important conversation to have with you throughout the process, because it impacts the local share of the cost of the project. And we have to be kind of very mindful of those items that are potentially not reimbursed at all. Not that they couldn't be in the project, but that the community has to understand the higher burden they pay on spaces that are not reimbursed by the MSBA.
And would the auditorium be included in that?
So the auditorium is not,
Non-reimbursed.
yeah, well, part of it is. So yes, the MSBA would reimburse a percentage of it if you were to
Up
take the
to-
size, yeah,
Right.
exactly. So they
That's what I'm
assume
saying.
a size that's roughly, what, 2/3 of the student body size for high school. Anything beyond that would be unreimbursed, so it's by percentage.
This is what I meant, the size of our auditorium wouldn't be
Is larger.
reimbursed fully at this point, if
Right.
we do the same thing.
Right, and then there's the factor that if you're renovating, that allows you to potentially keep a larger auditorium, because you get a little bit of support on a renovation project that's different.
Okay, what's that space at the top left corner, to the
Behind
left
the
of the
small
small
gym?
gym?
That is the weight room. So,
That's not reimbursable?
It's just severely
it can be,
undersized.
you
Or
have,
slightly undersized.
No, it's orange.
yeah, that is, or it really kind
I
of,
think it's because there will be an auxiliary gym space,
yeah,
but when we were just,
which one?
it was hard, it's gonna be a difficult process to plug all of the existing spaces into the
Yeah.
exact formula from the
That's, yeah,
MSBA,
that's
right?
fine, yeah.
So right now, the auxiliary gym space, we were calling the auxiliary gym space.
Oh, so that's a
So
third
therefore,
space.
the weight room is not reimbursable.
But we can have a weight room that's reimbursed, it's not a separate third space.
On the flip side of that coin is your existing large gymnasium is way undersized.
Agreed.
So you can get a much larger gym and then you can get a second space that can be used as a weight room, and that will be reimbursed.
Arena
Yes.
sized gym?
What's
Yes.
Arena?
Yeah, and,
Right.
and
Yes.
it may even be possible to have 3 spaces.
Yeah,
Sometimes you do have to have sort of a conversation with
Or
the
something
MSBA,
that
showing them what your demand is. So we already have heard how, I mean, this is an unusual district that has almost all students in PE. Not all districts are doing that anymore. So that if we can justify, your need for 3 different gymnasium type spaces, then that becomes part of the conversation. So it's
Plus
a
all
process.
the sports we offer, the fact that we have to program it all around one gym, because you can't really run a basketball practice in a small gym.
Which is
The athletics, they
Yeah.
they believe in, but it's not necessarily in the educational mindset. So
MSB is
more-
yes, yeah.
It's more
Exactly.
meaningful that you have 3 classes that
Yeah.
have to be served at one time
Good to know.
than that you have
Yep.
10 sports, that-
Gotcha, okay.
We're gonna have lots of these conversations as we go, and you will all become experts on the space summary.
Looking forward
And
to
the
that.
way to think about the MSBA, and it's actually good to get the communication out on this early on, the MSBA is contributing to the most educationally critical parts of your school.
Right.
So the MSBA doesn't see as high value in a large auditorium because it's not highly utilized and it's not highly critical to the educational mission of the school. But that doesn't mean that they don't think you couldn't use that space, it's on you. Because you're paying for somebody else's auditorium too, as a taxpayer.
How negotiable are these types of topics?
Not very.
Not very. Some categories are, and this is where the educational plan comes in, and it's very important. If you can support the need for certain things, especially the classrooms, special education, those are ones where there's some leeway.
So coming at it through the academic lens of physical education
That
is
will
how
help.
you now pick up that second gymnasium space.
Well, it's more how you can flex what your allowances are there. And there are sometimes within special education and core education where if it's academically justifiable, you can get a little bit of leeway. But on the flip side, they also have guidelines to keep you from undersizing spaces because they see what happens when you do things a certain way and then down the road it becomes a problem. So
Right.
they have give you some flexibility with some categories of space. But it is a tool that we work with early on.
Thanks, Steve. Had a question.
The approval of the reimbursement from the MSBA, is that done throughout, or is the building built and then they go back and go, no, 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 yes, no, yes, no, yes, yes, yes?
So this whole feasibility process ends with a schematic design that ends with an assessment of what is reimbursable and what is not. So before you go to the town vote, you know what the MSBA's commitment to the project is.
And once they this feasibility schematic is approved and it says 55% of what we're seeing there.
56?
56.
Percent count.
Thanks. But 56% is reimbursable. They're not gonna then, throughout the project, go back and audit and say, oh, wait a minute, this isn't quite what we thought.
It's really important to know that that 56% is not of the whole project, it's only
Right.
of what's eligible.
Eligible, right.
Right, so say they decide that, there are certain things we know are low eligibility, so site costs, there are many rules, there's a lot of things they don't reimburse on the site, and site tends to take you up, so that cost changes. So of the whole square footage of the building, not all of it will be 56% eligible, and even within that, of the square footage that's eligible for reimbursement, let's say 80% or 90% of the building is eligible for reimbursement, they only reimburse that amount of $360 per square foot.
Right, so if it costs 500 per square foot, the additional is on us,
Right.
and we get 56% of the 360. Okay.
Which is
so
how it is that you might see an eligibility of 56%, but your effective, if you look at overall, is typically 15 to 20% less.
But it is predetermined, Steve, so like the town will know, okay, that one.
And you're all gonna know this as we go forward, so they have an idea of what MSB is gonna,
That's
General
why you're working
That's
with
why
us,
you're
and so
here.
we're helping to
Yeah.
at least communicate it.
Okay.
And we wish we had more power than we do, but we'll
We have an
know, and
understanding, obviously.
we'll explain what's happening, and we'll try and steer certain decisions for that reason and explain them along the way. And then even then, I kind of wish we had a little bit more along the way with the MSBA. We have a fair amount, but ultimately there's a moment at which it sort of becomes clear. And even then, once we get into construction, there's a maximum grant, and there are certain rules that can affect the final number of that grant based on construction, which I think Ben will
Yeah.
lead you through in the process.
What was the connection to the square foot price you mentioned?
The connection to the square foot. So the MSBA sets, and we will during one of our talks explain how they decide this number, but the MSBA wants to think of them as they're funding projects all over the state. So rather than sort of change that cost per square foot they're willing to reimburse across the state, they set one number, $360 per square foot, which is basically equivalent to the direct cost, but not all those other costs. So they're supporting projects looking at that number and a percentage of that they're willing to pay.
Have they increased that? Will
They
they
do.
increase that? Because it's gone up
Every-
that much in a year, I
Every
feel.
year or two, typically, they will increase it.
Yeah.
And it's sort of they try and sort of average where things are heading and kind of keep going. Reality is that the cost of construction has gone higher, faster than their reimbursement rate, which is why it's feeling harder for communities because it is a spread.
Just to put it in perspective, that they recently upped it to $366 a square
The
foot.
last year?
Yeah, within, I wanna say it's maybe just over a year ago, but very recently. And what we're seeing, prices of $500 square foot for a tree, I mean, the construction costs that are out there,
Can't
so.
even get a roof right now.
Right, exactly, so as they are saying, hey, we're upping it 3, they're also fully admitting that it's not up to par with what we're seeing.
And when does that get set for us? Like the day we start building, before you guys are designing? Like when do we get, or if it increases, do we get that bump up?
Whatever rate it is at the end of schematic design.
At the end of schematic,
Is the one
yeah.
that you're stuck with.
So,
We might be lucky, we
and
might
there
take
might be some
another,
time in there, yeah.
yeah,
I would say in the
Within that
past,
board
the
meeting,
bumps are very small.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've heard Jack McCarthy or others say that they never pegged it to be at construction cost.
Right.
It was always supposed to be a number below what the average cost of construction is.
I mean, that's fair. It's just that this
But-
past year's been so abhorrent for
But
us.
the difference keeps getting bigger,
We're
which is
hoping
the hard
that-
part.
yeah, when we get estimates on SD, the market will have sort of settled down a little bit, I don't know, Steve, what you're seeing.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think the MSBA said that the schematic design, what is the timing of that? You said at the end of the schematic design.
We're looking at that being,
So
So-
the board,
Board
the
vote
project
will be-
scope and budget agreement in October of
October.
2023.
So we're looking fall of next year for this. That's when you get locked in.
there's a couple little things to add to that. One is that there are incentive points that can help that reimbursement rate. So a certain goal for sustainability will allow you to increase the reimbursement by 2%. Renovation can add a point, so there are things that change it. The other thing that changes is they will really reevaluate every year the reimbursement based on the poverty, income, and tax rate, poverty, income, and the three factors that go into that reimbursement rate assessment. It's a complicated formula nobody really seems to understand, but they do reevaluate that. So at whatever that puts you at as a community at that date, not today.
Facts.
So if the community's conditions are changing during this phase, that will be factored in as well.
But the minimum we'll get would be like the 56% they had said.
56 was locked in for the feasibility study.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So it
Thank
could
you.
change, if we go to construction, it could go up, but it could also go down, just so everybody's clear on. Okay.
We can revisit that again when we're looking at real spaces, and that'll probably be important. So just an image here as we move into this process and into showing you some designs about how part of our job is to help the community understand what spaces might feel like that are different than the ones you currently have, and show you other schools, show you schools we've worked on, listen and engage. And these are some of the things that we see as trends that are really important. So these have come up in the last 2 days here. A need for social space for students to connect with each other, a strong interest in outdoor classrooms and outdoor teaching spaces now, places that extend learning beyond the classroom, classrooms that are able to be more relevant to project-based learning and kind of work-oriented learning experiences. So not all desk opportunities, but actually hands-on opportunities. And then more agile classrooms that can adapt and change based on where teachers want to go. Maybe today you want to do a project, tomorrow you need to be doing a lecture, students are presenting. So the classrooms need to be more flexible and functional to that type of demand. Also, a part of the project will be sustainability, design. So we will be designing in a way, and we'll talk with you about your priorities. Typically, we know you're going to want low operating costs. So we talk a lot about operating costs. We also talk about, life cycle costs, making decisions for equipment that will last, and over the lifespan of that equipment or those material decisions will make sense for the district. But there are increasing code requirements and increasing appetite for sustainability and on-site power generation, and trying to incorporate some of those issues into the design. So it's an extensive process, and there are many, many factors to it that we'll share along the way. And also critical to that is hearing from your staff. We put this in really just to highlight how we know, as a firm that works with Western Massachusetts schools, how often you have sometimes a small facilities department maintaining a building, and how their capacity is really important to understand, to engage with. So we will certainly, and have already begun to engage with your staff to understand the capacity of the district, so that we're not producing a school that is difficult to take care of, but that is a challenge as schools become more complex buildings. I'm going to pass it to Christian to talk through some of our explorations.
Great. So these are three very initial ideas. Preserving the good is kind of an ad reno scheme where it's very small amount of renovation, I'll say, and quite a bit of addition. But the MSBA will want us to see an option that's not even shown on here, which is just a fix it option, bring it up to code, and so that we can at least understand the costs and the impact that would have to really just fix the building and make it working well today. Then we'll also look at least one ad reno option, sometimes more, and then at least one all new building option. And here we're showing two different all new building options. One is School is Bridge and one is Compass Rose. The existing site, of course, you guys are much more familiar with this than the MSBA is, but we did want to just show, the fact that you have so many athletic fields is really quite an incredible resource. I stress my.
And we need more if you can fit those in.
Oh, we heard that today.
There's not enough.
The athletic director.
You're going to want to watch his screen for this little presentation.
Yeah, so, thinking about what a resource that is, both for the high school and also for the community, but also the fact that the building where it's situated today really does kind of block that community resource from Maple Street. And there's not too much of a connection between the baseball, or between the building and the new football and track.
We're not taking a tennis course. Just so you know.
And they're throwing some basketball courts.
You'll see some
tennis
options where we
courts
do.
and track.
We're putting a basketball court there too. Yeah.
Tennis courts.
That's right. Every little battle.
Whatever
we gotta
pulls
hold
the
on to.
community in.
So this is a fly-through of that ad reno option. So you can see we saved the pool and the gymnasium, adding on to the gymnasium a little bit on the other side of it. You can see the addition in yellow.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
We're not keeping that pool.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're showing it to get
Okay.
those
I
reactions.
just, if we're doing this, we're not keeping that pool. That pool was gross when I was here 20 years ago.
It was
Yeah.
gross when I was here, even longer than that.
Perfect. So the reason why we showed keeping it is because sometimes, like with the auditorium, right, it's an oversized space. It's a space that the MSBA is not going to reimburse. And so if you renovate it, sometimes those dollars can be less than new. So if the pool was in pretty good shape and we could renovate it to make it in really nice shape, then it might be worth looking at in terms of saving dollars.
Did you walk down
But
to
to your
the
point-
filter room with Mr.
No,
Fenny
plus
today?
it's a 4-lane. It's
The
7
problem
minutes.
is it's
And
a
it's a big
four-lane
swimming
school.
town. It's always has been, and it's been undersized
Yeah.
forever. So if we're doing this project, that's part of the sell is the new pool.
Yeah, that's what.
Before you leave this week, you gotta go down into the.
Don't do it.
Yeah. And again, remember, when we do these interviews, we haven't met you yet, so we don't
Yeah.
know who's gonna say the opposite, so we gotta be careful.
That's a great point, just to bring back. These were all presented
To
during
keep the
the
point.
interview with the MSBA.
Financially, you don't know.
So this, a quick picture, this is an auditorium that we renovated. This is at the Hoosick Valley High School out in Adams, Cheshire. And we've also renovated an auditorium in a very similar way up Turner's Falls. And we did that project with SMMA actually. So just, showing some examples of it has been done before. This auditorium looked much worse than that before we started the renovation process. And it came out quite nicely. This is, of course, the new pool at West Springfield, which SMMA did.
Oh, yeah.
And so maybe that's a better model.
That's what we're looking
That's
for.
what you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put that on the list.
And then in this scheme, we're showing a kind of a narrower classroom core, but quite different than what you see from your current double-loaded corridor in your classroom wings today. So breakout spaces, flexible furniture, a lot of this ties into some of the concepts that Dory was bringing up earlier. And so this was one option, and then another iteration will show kind of a similar layout, but a slightly different approach.
Now, the trend I know, like in Longmeadow, was the teachers don't have a classroom, but they use classrooms and they have like a space. Is that still kind of what's happening now? Where they have a, collaborative space, but not their own.
Part of our process is about finding out what's right here and
Okay.
listening. And, there are choices that have to be made there.
Yeah.
Definitely, there's the reason why that trend's happening is utilization. And, again, big expensive buildings that are hard to maintain cost-wise, that are energy waste. Are you sure you're using your space, or are you allowing teachers to sit for an hour or two in a space alone that is 800 and 900 square feet? So there's a legit reason for that, but that doesn't mean that it's a standard that you have to follow.
Okay.
So we'll be presenting different options and looking at it, and we're certainly hearing a very strong desire here.
Well, they have their own theme, and I think
Yeah.
that's what you lose, but I also understand you don't want spaces sitting there unused for.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be helped by having a larger planning space that they can all use collaboratively, or there's other, options.
Okay.
So this is an all-new school. This we call the bridge scheme, and the central circulation is running east-west, and we have kind of our community spaces to the north, closer to the parking lot, closer to the public access. So auditorium, gym, pool, all to the north. Central circulation running east-west, and then classroom wings to the south. This brings the school a little bit further into the site, so we have a bit more room for site circulation. And that's something I certainly heard a lot about today, talking to the principal and talking to the student resource officer. Really trying to separate that bus traffic from car traffic, more defined parking spaces, defined staff parking area, defined student parking area. And that's something that we can work on with all of these options.
Yeah.
On this one, we envisioned, we also heard that there was a real desire to celebrate the library, the media center, as opposed to where it is today in the current school. So thinking that this hallway could culminate with the media center at the end, views to the exterior, a nice indoor-outdoor relationship, a new gym, and here we talked a little bit about, fairly inexpensive approaches to design, lifting it up, exposing the structure, trying to get as much daylight in there as possible.
I like the West Springfield one you did with the catwalk, or whatever you call it, the loop around the
running
top.
track, right?
I think they get a lot of use for it.
And then this is another kind of concept of that classroom core. This one is a little bit more kind of square in layout, and really it's much more efficient. And the way that we're able to still make it a nice, bright, vibrant space is by having large group instruction in the center of that space, hopefully daylit from above. So you still have some nice daylighting in the middle of that kind of flexible large space in the middle, and then classrooms oriented around the outside of the core, again with the flexible teaching environments.
And in both of those different little models that Christian's shared, there you also see that there's an effort to bring in some smaller spaces near to the classrooms to support pull-out space or planning spaces or conference room spaces, which you do hear is a need here.
I forgot to say on that previous one issue with the previous iteration is that a fair amount of that building footprint is on top of the existing school footprint. And so we'd have to figure out, how to phase the construction accordingly, whether we would need modular classrooms, which the MSBA will not reimburse on. And so once we kind of get down the road on those, but that's always something to think about is what happens during the construction
If you're going in
process.
this direction and they're not reimbursing the modular classrooms, because I'm assuming this also lengthens the time of construction, because you're now trying to operate school while you're renovating certain portions. Wouldn't that overall push your costs up, or we're going to see that in the study?
Yeah, we'll see that as we dive into it. I think with this, an example like this where the footprint is semi-overlapping and you've got some modular classrooms on the side, I don't think your construction process would be that much longer.
Mm-hmm.
The first option with a very intricate ad reno situation, that construction process might be longer, and at those costs.
And that's still going to bring on the modular classrooms while they do that. Yeah.
What's the little building by the parking lot?
Oh, that's fantastic. Great question. So one thing that we were thinking about during this was where the district administration should go. And so in the first version, and I forgot to point this out, thank you for saying that, we actually enlarged the school a little bit and included as part of the school. Again, this will be non-reimbursable square footage from the MSBA, but will be something to evaluate as we kind of go through this process. Is should it be part of the school? Here it's separate but near the parking lot, and with our next iteration, here it's separate and kind of on the other end of the site, a little bit more similar to today where it has a different parking lot and site circulation to get there over on the west side of the site. So this is our final kind of all new option. This still overlaps the building a little bit, but not much. It really just requires the demolition of the auxiliary gym and that weight room. The rest of the school could stay as is during construction, and then the new school could get built, and then the existing school demolished, and the fields done at that point. You can see that in general with all of these options. I think our first thought was let's put a new school to the south of the existing school. That's right. We have all of open play space. But when we started doing that, first of all, it felt very isolated from the rest of the site. It felt incredibly isolated from the football field and track, which I know has somewhat recently been redone. And so the more we thought about it, the more we really wanted to kind of keep the footprint in a similar location as it is today, and if not, make a stronger connection with the football field and parking. And then also the huge benefit of that is that it leaves the rest of the site open for much more flexible field layout to the south and to the west.
But couldn't we flip-flop those, Christian? And the only reason why I keep asking that is those tennis courts are important to a lot of people in this town, and it's gonna upset a lot of people in this town if we talk about taking them down already. Also, we're putting a basketball court, which isn't as big a deal, but that's my one hesitation with the spot. I understand the proximity, the centralization, the proximity to the turf field, but my thought had always been that south field, not touch the existing building. You could build that and then, just creep it over as close as you can to the east. But I know it's wet there too.
Well, part of what I think we've been listening and why we do that is to find out what the community relationship to the site and the school's relationship are, and how intertwined those are, or whether or not might not be better to have a little bit of separation. So the community heavily uses all those resources next to the field and the field.
Yeah.
If we move the school away, that might have benefits, we're realizing, to some degree, because then there isn't that overlap. But you'd have to replace some of those resources with a good field near the school for those outdoor PE and athletic needs.
Sure.
And then the teams obviously would go there. So maybe a movement away isn't bad, maybe that helps, but then you still have a lot of field space that you need to be sure you provide.
Right.
Because even though it looks like a generous site, when you start laying out the number of fields, it gets a little tricky. So our thought in this prep for the interview was that it would be a very bold move to pull away from those resources, given that you've made this investment. But now that we're here listening to you, we're likely to sort of explore that further, I think.
Yeah, and especially because the parking lot's not worth saving. It needs to be replaced anyway, so that has to all come out.
Mhm.
So we could potentially put fields up there and make that more of the field side.
Mhm.
And then the south section, the new building, not disturbing the kids who are here. Again, you all have the good ideas. I just,
We
my
also heard
envisioning
from
was
people
that.
today, which was interesting, that pushing the school back into the site is something people would favor, because teachers want to use the outdoors, but they have a tendency to protect the front and not want students out there. It feels like too close to the parking.
Come back
So-
this way.
But they'll go
Yep.
backwards. So in some ways, the idea of maybe nesting the school into the site a little more has benefits to this interest in.
You already have us up in the parking lot. Put us way up.
Yeah,
It's fine.
yeah.
Let's get a little tent, central office, good to go.
Is that you think it was a
But-
tent court?
yeah.
Fine.
I mean, the other issue about putting the school into the site is it does mean more paving to get to.
Sure,
Where's the
for
parking
the
going,
access,
so
yeah.
you might end up chewing up a lot of site to do that as well, so.
I think there's a cost issue too. I mean, the cost of converting parking to fields is a lot.
What about converting parking to building? What if we put the building up and the existing parking?
All the asphalt.
I think that's worth exploring. I mean, with a lot of these, we're really focused on trying to get, great north and south orientation to our classroom wings.
Which I appreciate and
Yeah.
we want,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think,
Play with it, and if in the end this site makes the most sense, then we'll do it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, as I said, affection for those courts. We
Right.
just did them, fundraising,
Mhm.
team effort,
Yeah.
all that.
We still have all the
Right, that's
visiting.
why I was saying,
Yeah,
let's
so
throttle
we'll get this.
down with the basketball, like just.
No, we're doing the
just-
basketball court, Beth. Come on,
Yeah,
progress, it's 5 years away.
well, they'll know I think we're gonna have a good feel by October what's gonna happen.
Yeah, so just so
And
you
I
know what we're
think
talking about, we
Yeah.
proposed the basketball court
Yeah,
to the left of the turf field.
right, and
we're working with the school district right now where they really wanted an electronic sign in front of their school, like the LED lights. And they worked with their planning board for years to get it approved. And they just got it approved, and now we're hoping to do a school project there in 3 years. Luckily, we're able to wait until we're far enough along where we could say, okay, put it there and build it next month. And then if the school project gets approved and we're able to do it, it'll all work out. So, I think there's
Same
that.
kind of thinking,
Okay.
yeah. So we'd like to just
Fair.
participate in that conversation about the
okay.
basketball courts. Yeah.
Do you know where we're talking now, though, at least?
Yes.
Between the tennis and the,
They walked the grounds today.
Again, it's another community effort that was
Yeah,
big. It was a lot of push because we don't have any basketball courts. It's crazy in this town.
Right.
Trying to get, something done like that, and now it's done. We just don't want to lose it.
Exactly.
Fair.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about the parking? If you were here Monday night after our school committee meeting, you'd know what I was referring to. Cars were everywhere because every field was being used.
Yeah.
Which means all the parents come, which, grandparents, there was no place for parking.
They
So
park back here.
for all the fields, because that's
It's
too,
these fields that are used.
Yeah.
Because they don't wanna walk.
They don't
Like
want-
I wouldn't wanna walk.
no, and if you're,
For the sport event.
so,
Right, so, well, I think that's where understanding the rec department's use is really helpful to really understand how they're accessing and trying to, we have to kind of master plan the
Well,
site.
but to Pam's point, we don't use the big parking lot for the back fields.
Yeah.
They don't get used,
They're
so
not
it's a disconnect
Yeah,
for that part. And I
exactly.
think this continues that, Pam, that's kind of
yes,
my
that's
concern.
exactly what I was saying.
So maybe we should centralize the parking lot. Maybe that's not aesthetically pleasing, but
Celebrate the parking.
we can put some
Or-
bushes around it.
Or you create multiple satellites so that you
Maybe
don't.
that, yeah,
Which
yeah.
the schools express some interest in.
Like faculty parking, yeah, that would be, because, we have the silly red line that nobody follows out there where the students that park past.
Whoa. I put that red line.
We have a great red line out there that some kids follow, sorry, yes, you're right.
Circa 2003, my friend.
Cool.
And people followed
dating
it
yourself.
when I was there.
Right, you really enforce it, that's why.
That's right. I stood on it.
So this is an animation of that, the third and final kind of all new option. Again, trying to keep the community resources towards the front of the school. So we have the auditorium on the right there, gym and pool on the left, a clear main entry for the building, classroom wings a little bit to the south. The nice thing about this location that we thought is that it does allow for some of that indoor, outdoor access and connection with the wooded area of the site, which we think is kind of maybe one of the more underutilized portions of the site, while still kind of keeping the athletic fields as open and flexible as possible.
Is that what that white loop is coming out?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, like a trail.
So here thinking about, the commons and the core of the building, here in kind of a north-south orientation, really trying to think about how, again, saving money on square footage, utilizing space more often during the day. Can the cafeteria be part of the circulation? Can the cafeteria be a large breakout space that can be used more often of the day than just during lunch? And I think from Dory's conversations today, it's also about how we can provide a more varied cafeteria environment, not just one large open space, but also, some more private spaces or some spaces that don't feel so open and overwhelming. So something we can certainly explore. This is a
COVID operations for that, in terms of cleaning.
right.
I don't know if that's impacted any of the thinking or not, in terms of, is one of the things that impacted all of our operations in terms of scheduling lunch was the amount of time we needed now between lunches to fully clean the cafeteria and allow the cleansers to do their job and so forth, because you had each one at different timeframes.
Yeah.
4 minutes on the, granted, a lot of that changed as we learned more about how COVID operates and how it's spread, but
Is the cafeteria eligible for reimbursement?
Oh, yeah.
It is, and the kitchen area also, you have
Yes.
cooking?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
very nice.
Yeah.
Have you
I'd
saw
say
it?
in general, cafeterias are usually smaller than districts are anticipating. The MSBA anticipates 3 seatings a day and it very efficiently used during
Every
those
seat
3
is
seatings.
accounted for.
even if you
Yeah.
did it something like this, they would,
Well, then you can kind of write as some of that circulation space and part of your grossing factor and, right. That's what you can.
I'm with you.
So this, as opposed to the first option where we showed a renovated auditorium, this is an all-new auditorium, which both JWA and Esmond may have quite a bit of experience with, and we also have a theater consultant on our team, really looking at things like acoustics and lighting and all of those nuances. to make it a great space. And then that outdoor teaching environment, again, capitalizing on that indoor-outdoor connection. How can we celebrate that space at the end of the circulation spine?
I think covered for that.
Oh, we heard about
Covered.
covered and
Yeah, we did hear
shading
that.
as well.
Yeah.
You're hearing a lot about.
Put heaters in there, they could leave outside in the winter.
But I don't have to rent tents anymore.
Yeah, no, I know, but I know my daughter specifically, that tent's out in the backyard, and she's sitting in that tent every single
likes
day.
to be
And I think a lot of the kids do, so,
Yeah.
but I'm all about it being covered, and then it becomes summer camp space, community space, a lot of things you could do with that.
That's true. Summer camps.
Yeah, and then this one is really talking about the iterative process. So we've just started it a little bit with you today, just looking at options, going back to the drawing board continuously, showing you options every time, nearly every time we meet. That's what we will be up to over the next few months. But in addition to the actual design work, what we're deep into right now, and as Dory has already talked about, is the educational programming. Being on site here, meeting with your teachers and staff all day yesterday, most of the day today, and tomorrow as well. We're having great conversations, learning a ton about your awesome staff, and getting lots of really good feedback to help us continue moving forward. And I think another piece of this is the educational visioning that David Stephen will be leading. I think that might come up later with the dates slide.
Do you meet with the students as well? Any students?
Well, we would like to. We haven't been able to slot them in quite yet. So either, I think we'll kind of talk to you, Gordon, about that, whether that's an in-person meeting. We've also had success with doing like a survey monkey, to kind of start drawing in some student opinion thoughts about what's important to them in a new school. So we need to get to the students, absolutely.
It's a great experience because it really gives opportunity for students' voices to be amplified. And I think they frankly always provide the best insight.
We couldn't agree more.
Although mine's been enjoying the retro feel of it all.
So this was just how we concluded our interview with MSBA, and I think holds true today that it's a long process. It takes a lot of steps to get there, but this was the ribbon cutting at an elementary school we did up in South Hadley, and this is the part that we really look forward to. Is when we can all work and celebrate, be in a new space.
Well, do we want to start? It sounds like we've gotten a lot of feedback
Some
along the
good
way.
feedback
Shall we?
on, some of the initial
Yeah.
We wanted
options.
to provide a moment just to check in if there was any strong reactions to.
So we're looking to put that basketball court in. Is there somewhere on the campus that you're comfortable with that right now? And if not, then no, but we want to put it in if it's funded, so, but no, wait, is that what you're saying?
If you wait a little while.
Okay, fair.
Like when they plan on doing that, like within the month?
This summer, though.
The summer?
Yeah.
That's why I was saying
Actually-
over by the church, not to,
Mr. Fenning's
We'll
on.
wait until we get there.
Yeah, you're gonna start to get a pretty good sense by the end of summer, by
Okay.
the end of August, which is when that PDP, and we'll.
Bruce, do you have a time frame on what they were thinking with the basketball court?
I haven't spoke to Chris in quite some time. I'm not even sure if he's gone in front of CPC and if CPC's even approved the project.
So you may have time.
I
But
think
you're
we have
saying-
plenty of time. I told him as well, until the feasibility study is done, I will not make a determination anywhere on site until that school or this process has come up with a preliminary plan.
The CPC, their last meeting, when they did the Heritage Park, they tabled it. They didn't.
Oh, they did?
they didn't vote.
Okay. Okay, so then we have time maybe to coordinate some things.
That would be.
Steve, what's the ask, you know?
I don't know, because I was there for the Heritage Park part and I left.
I'm kind of looking at, like, when you're looking at the preserving the good and the compass rose, that you're almost putting that building for the Compass Rose far enough back where you wouldn't be touching the existing tennis courts. I know aesthetically there's tennis courts in front of the school, but I think maybe I'm gonna give you guys I like the idea of that particular school not being too close to our neighbors in the back because they've never had the school that close. They've had fields, but they haven't had, so I know, but
School's not that loud.
We're very quiet,
it'll be some,
barely even know we're here,
it's tough. Good luck with it.
unless we're having a pep rally.
What about keeping this existing structure for a central office? I know it's not ideal, but if we're talking about a separate building that the town's gonna have to fund 100% anyway, it's in the wrong place, right?
It's quite in the wrong
Yeah.
place.
And there's no
It's
part of the
certainly-
building worth keeping that we could convert to central office.
Part of what we'll be doing is a full existing conditions assessment,
Okay,
where we'll, as architects and engineers, look at all those issues of systems and what is it worth to hold on to some piece of it or repair it or replace
Okay.
it. So,
because I'm sure that'll be a $3 million building. And
yeah,
our capital expenditures are $1 million a year, if at best, half go to the schools typically, so.
One of the things that we've never dug into, and Joe and Bruce jump in if I'm incorrect on this. We know a lot about our electrical system. We know about our roof. We don't know a ton about our plumbing system. We just kind of repair. Am I right, Joe and Bruce? Like we repair as we go and then we find out when we have issues?
I'll maybe let Joe, but I mean, a lot of our systems are obviously old. But like I said, this is why we're doing this feasibility study and getting
Right.
the recommendations from these experts.
Like that would be the, I was writing the SOI, the statement of interest each year, that was something I didn't say a lot about because we didn't know a lot about it.
yeah.
When you have an issue.
Right.
And one of the bigger issues that we have periodically is we clog the whole system.
Yeah.
And that takes a while to bring it. It takes down this whole wing, not just central office, but up through the art wing in terms of usage.
Another
Doesn't
part,
happen frequently, but it happens.
early on, we'll also do an analysis of a fixture count. We would suspect, based on what we're hearing, that you're low on fixtures because you've probably taken small bathrooms and expanded them, and in the process lost fixtures, in your total count. So, how are you meeting code in all these areas? How are you meeting code with accessibility? You may be good in terms of getting bodies through the building, but are your grabs and your access, are they limited? So all of those things become part of it. And we've kind of heard clues along the way of things to look at specifically that are.
I'm sure you heard a lot of things today.
Another thing we need on the campus is restrooms and
Restrooms, yeah.
concessions. Is that subject to reimbursement from MSBA? No, so that's a full, but would we include that in a full project?
Yes.
Is that something we would?
Something, yeah. we should talk
Potentially.
about.
But then it's added to the top of or the bottom line, it's added.
I mean, that would complete
Additional
something
cost.
that's been on our capital plan for a while because the original field project had a building, had stands that matched the home side stands, had water cannons. What else am I missing? The water cannons.
We got the
we
water
could fund.
cannons.
But we have the plumbing underneath. We just don't have the
Yeah, I don't
cannons.
either.
The other thing I wanted to mention, because Don's here now, Don Mackey from LCAT, he actively teaches classes within LCAT. How do they work that? Because we need a place to put Don, we need a place for our students to go to hang out with Don, right?
That's going for your done.
We're gonna talk about that tomorrow.
We're gonna talk about that
He's
tomorrow.
on, he's on the
Yeah,
interview
okay.
list.
All right, good.
If there is an educational piece, the interface with the students, then there is likely to be some amount of square footage that
Okay,
the MSBA will
That's huge.
participate in.
okay.
Anything beyond that would be, unreimbursable.
Okay.
But I would say at this moment, let's put out there what you want. And then we can start to scale back. I don't wanna say, don't put something on the list
Right.
just because they're not going to participate. because in the end, you want a total project that works for you.
And you want something that the community's gonna embrace. And there'll be things that,
IT was a surprise.
IT is here, their house.
Sorry, that's another, right, that's
Sorry, I meant
another
to
one we need
interrupt
to
you.
just.
yeah, no, that's a great point.
Just all of a
IT,
sudden came to my mind, because
Yeah.
IT
IT
is on the
has,
second floor.
3 of our classrooms.
Right, right.
Central
That's a
offices,
two
big
boxes.
square
IT,
footage.
some
I think it's
people like
3 now.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, all of those are.
One other way to
That's
think about
not
it.
enough room at town hall for them, right?
Consider like
Yes.
things that might have been undone in a project a few years ago or whatever it might be. The ask that we're gonna make of the town financially is gonna be significant.
Yeah, it is.
But when you look at that overall ask and then you say, okay, that overall ask is gonna result in the average property tax bill going up by X.
Yeah.
To put another $5 million on that ask, if the tax bill goes up by another $12 over 30-year bonds, I mean, it's just, like, to your point, put it on the list.
Right.
Don't be afraid to think big now.
Right.
There'll be plenty of time to cut later.
Right. Which we may have to do, we just have to be realistic that we
right.
may have to
Yeah.
cut because
Yeah.
we do have to get it past the town.
But start from the right place.
Yeah, yep, I agree.
Yeah.
But these are things the town wants. You know, the town.
Well, but
town
there's a
wants
fine line
approval.
between what's gonna pass this town and what's not gonna pass this town,
Correct.
so we have to walk that line.
And let's make sure it
And-
starts
Very
with the
much your
district.
job.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah,
So-
very
And
community
we
oriented.
will we will put up warning flags if we see something
Yeah.
going. I'm not gonna name a district I'm working with right now, but they wanted a field house. They wanted a whole field house and they didn't want to hear no until we got pretty deep into it. It's not something the MSBA will, they have a very firm policy about
Diagram.
that.
Central office was the field house.
So-
More class, we start handing out equipment.
Concession stand.
You're here anyway, Gordon.
And,
I get
hot dog.
that.
Right, I know.
That brings up another question, I guess, for me is like, what happens okay, this used to be, well, this was built later, but this used to be the shop area,
Yeah.
right? So at how many years moving into the future, say we build this brand new school and it's fit for everything we want and it's great, and then all of a sudden we're like, I don't know, we have to move you back into the high school. You know what I mean? When like they decide, okay, central office, we're moving you because now we have something that's beyond IT that we don't know exists yet. So you're going back into the school. At what point can we move a central office back into, or move something that's non-reimbursable back into the school without trying to be tricky or
Good
sleazy or,
question.
I know,
Without-
like,
Yeah.
is it 5, 10, 15,
I'd
just
say the
be
only
quiet
problem
and
that
do it?
we've run into is that the school population increases and they run out of room.
With
Yeah,
the new
go
school.
out. Yeah,
So
that too.
we have, I don't think ever had the situation where we've had empty space in a new school where other stuff could fit into it.
And also just to your question, I think how long is the MSBA paying attention to this project?
Yeah.
Once the school is done and
Got it.
closed out, it's your school. I mean, they're not controlling the school. They pay attention to the district's relationship to MSBA, long-term, so they sometimes try and recover,
Okay.
funding,
You know,
but
like
not, but
if
they
they give
wouldn't
you a
block
roof,
that.
You're
If
in
we,
that
if
zone
we
for
had gone
20
into
years, that
another
kind of
project or we
Yeah.
look to, let's say Meadowbrook, we have 2 accelerated repair, what you're saying is, if we then were to say, oh, well, you know what, we're closing Meadowbrook, then they would say, whoa, wait a second, we invested in Meadowbrook.
Right.
Right,
There'll be
exactly,
some
exactly.
clawback.
Yeah.
So, one question for you. So speaking about the enrollment, if it were to increase, so do you build this or design this so that it would be easy to?
Yes.
Okay.
They will ask, as part of all these modules that we need to go through, it's very prescribed what we need to demonstrate how we would deal with that, or how we would design the building to accommodate 20% growth,
Yep.
or 10% growth, so, yes.
Yeah.
Because we're really
That's
thinking,
important here,
when we
I
get a new
think.
high school, they
I
are
think
going
so,
to
too.
come.
Well, I'm thinking of Hopkinton
They
is in
will
my head
come.
right now.
It's
They're
not
adding an
always a
addition.
big deal, but I think.
No, I think,
They've said they don't come because of the high school.
we're seeing building in town grow,
Yes.
or increase, and I think if we build a high school, people will come.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there are folks who have moved here,
It is.
based on schools and so forth, but as they got into the schools, one of the things they asked during registration was, we've heard you're building a new high school.
Mhm.
And that was pre-feasibility study, and so
Yeah.
I had to talk about the process a little bit, but now I can talk about a process that's now moving, which is exciting.
so sorry, but I have to run.
Okay, so I'm
You're
jumping.
in
I'm gonna pass this to you.
Okay.
And Dory, can you bring that back?
Sure, will do. So this is kind of just a different version of what you saw earlier from Skanska, but just to clarify a little bit, because when we met with leadership, we were throwing out all these buzzwords and nobody could follow us. So feasibility study is actually made up of those two parts that Ben mentioned. There's the preliminary design phase, where we're actually just trying to get a series of different options of the right scale. We'll know the scale of how much square footage, what you have. We're trying to look at those and try and get you numbers based on what's going on around the state in new construction in schools. So it's really more of a kind of a scope exercise more than it is a design exercise, but we're moving our way towards it, having these conversations here if you build versus here, which one's more expensive. And we, along the way in that process, are also going to start asking you to, as a group, decide your priorities so that you're assessing the options via your priorities. And if you need to reach out and hear from others along the way, hopefully the visioning will allow you to do that. After that phase, there's a phase where we narrow the options down with you. We let the MSBA know where we are, and then we kind of move forward, and then you select the one preferred option that goes into schematic design. And those are the three steps that make up feasibility and schematic design, which is the contract that we're in with you on. As a part of this first phase, PDP we call it, we have the district work to develop an educational program. And this is the document that we can help a little bit, but really it's about internally you all deciding and communicating. And it's extremely important because it's how you explain how many students are in what programs. And ultimately it's the guide for our work. It's also somewhat of a guide to the MSBA to understand whether you really need space in these programs or not. So it's really important to be very thorough about not only where you are, but also where you want to go educationally, and communicate your values and your needs and your vision. And it's the summer project essentially for the district, and it's a tough one, but we'll provide as much help as we can.
We were looking for a summer project.
I know you need. We'll also develop a preliminary space summary, and that's basically based on the number of students, how big of the school, and then we look at what your course loads are, your schedule, and try and start mapping that out to try and understand that. And that becomes the guide to the design process. We'll have our teams in here doing existing conditions evaluations in June as soon as the school's closed for the summer. We'll be doing site development requirements, interfacing with the town to figure out the permitting process. We'll be developing some preliminary alternatives with you and discussing them with you, and also finding from you all your priorities for evaluation, because you have to explain why you've chosen made the choices you've made. Not just for the MSBA, honestly, it's more for the community, because down the road, people who weren't paying attention are going to ask, why didn't you do a renovation, or why didn't you do a phased design? So it's important to clearly articulate your process. This is an example to some degree of that process that we'll go through, where we'll establish a matrix and try and outline, the advantages and disadvantages of the different options, and based on this site, this project. And that's a very helpful process.
This is an example from Gardner.
This is an example from Gardner where we
In case
actually.
anybody's watching, this is.
Yeah, it's not here, it's not here. Thank you. This is actually the preferred option. This is actually the second stage of reduction of options, So they began actually a project that was very much everybody assumed a renovation. After lots of deliberation, they actually ended up with a new site, which we did not anticipate at all. So it's a process we don't know where we're going yet. So in terms of where we are right now, we wanted to review the visioning process. As we mentioned, there's David Stephen, our consultant, who we've done a first visioning exercise with the leadership of the district. But what we've outlined with him and with the district leadership is the idea of 3 90-minute sessions that are conducted via Zoom so that people can participate at home. Looking to get a broad cross-section of people who represent parents, students, staff, community members, folks who will use the school but aren't regularly here, maybe from allied organizations for shared use operations, And ideally, it's great if those people are participating in each of them because they're kind of workshop based. We'll be showing a lot of material. People may have breakout rooms and engage there.
So we were hoping that as many of the school building committee members as possible could participate in the Monday, June 13th, the Wednesday, June 22nd, and the Wednesday, June 29th. Those are going to be virtual. And for those who participated back in 2013 in the visioning workshops that we did the one we did at the fire station, I would imagine it's going to be similar, but also with some new pieces to it. And then the June 15th one, that's for the entire community. So we want to start advertising that. And that's probably going to be more informative for the community and maybe less or no breakout rooms, that kind of thing.
It'll be some of this material, the overall process, what it means, and there will be a little piece of the visioning that do with the whole community, so.
So today we wanted to put this on your calendars and hopefully all of you would be able to participate. I've put a general invitation out to the town department heads at our last meeting, but I will become more specific now that we've actually solidified dates and get that out to town department heads so that they can be part of it. We've met with our rec department head today, Donna Prather. And we want you to meet with other department heads as well so that it truly becomes this community building.
And that community forum, that is in person, it says, I don't know if everybody can see that. And people will be able to ask questions during that forum, right? So they'll be able to, okay.
Yeah, it's so early. We want that to be a real listening opportunity for us.
For the community to come in and voice their opinions and.
But that one's going to be in the auditorium here at the high school.
Auditorium.
And these are all final dates, right?
I believe these are final dates. How are we feeling about this?
We were hoping to fly it out here, make sure this group is aware and full throttle with promoting them and helping with that.
We did run into a few scheduling conflicts.
Yes, we did.
But,
And
June is busy for.
We know, this is a lot to ask, but yes.
And understand that there will be other community forums down the road as the design evolves. This is just the kick.
It sounds like this is a pretty important one though, right?
I won't be doing that.
It would be great.
A lot of it's about letting
Yes.
people know it's really happening because they've
Yeah.
heard about it.
It is the night before the last day of school, right? The 16th, but it'll be,
people will be riveted.
yes.
And then finally, just to talk a little bit about communications. Sorry, Helen, you got a word.
Yes, I do.
So project communications, so again, as a part of transparency with the community, we've started the process of establishing a website with Ryan's help. And we've provided information about the process and the team. And we'll continue to put all of these presentations up there, minutes.
I think Veronica's on with us.
Oh, is she?
Victoria
I'm
is, I
sorry,
believe she's,
Victoria.
Veronica, Victoria, you'll get it down. Yeah, Victoria is on, I believe she
I'm
has
sorry,
capability
Victoria.
of.
That's okay.
So Victoria,
long
I'll
as-
introduce you real quick because I don't think anybody can see. Victoria Clifford is with Skanska. She's also, so that is not Victoria. That is Bruce.
I did see.
Sorry, but Victoria's with Skanska. She's been spearheading our efforts on the communications front. So she's gonna take you through where we're at with all of that.
Sure, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Sure can.
I'll take Veronica, just no Vicky, okay?
And I apologize.
No, that's okay.
There's a Veronica, it's an email that I have to answer, so.
It's a
on
nice
my
name.
mind.
It's a-
I apologize, Victoria.
No worries. So as I'm not sure if that was Helen or Dory, but as just mentioned, we have made some progress on just setting some goals and for the website and also just goals for reaching the community and stakeholders in general. So we met with some reps from your school building committee and Ryan and the project team to go over the website. And really, I think our main goals for the website would just be to explain the process. Also have the schedule be very visual on there. And also right now, we're working on getting some intros for Skanska and also JWA and SMMA on there. And then also we'll be adding information on the school building committee, probably similar to how you advertise the school committee with contact information. And also the MSBA's role in the project. And our hope is that the website will be the hub for all documentation on the project so that the community gets used to using that as a resource for all information on the project, where we're at, and just making everything as accessible as possible so that the community feels, included in the process. Everything is, nothing's hard to find. Also, we'd like to use the website to highlight any project news, decisions that have been made to date, and also updates, using that to advertise for community forums like we have coming up on the 15th, and any tours or other events that the project will be participating in. And obviously the content on the website will evolve over time, as we go through each module throughout the project. We also discussed, how to best reach the stakeholders. So as I mentioned, I think the website being the hub for anything factual about the project is key. And then, using some of the software that the district and town currently already uses, like LCAT, Blackboard Connect, student portals, and the town website. And then also some of your Facebook or social media presence for the district, town departments, shared use organizations. If we can pull information from the website, especially like advertising that we're having a community forum, and have it go through those channels, we think that'd be a great way to get the word out, so that we get as much community involvement as possible. And we also set up a email for the project, and that's we have that listed here on the slide, and that will show on the website as the email address to contact for any inquiries. And then Skanska will get copies of those emails and manage responding to those, and can report back any of those emails that are coming in with the rest of the school building committee. And that will be used throughout feasibility, and then also through construction. I know during construction you'll get a lot of, what's this noise over here, or what's going on over there. So
We actually get that now.
yeah.
We don't even have construction.
And then not listed here, but obviously upcoming, we're just working on getting that website live. It's going to be linked to your town website. And Ryan is helping with managing that. And we're working on getting a flyer together for the upcoming community forum. And that should be posted on the site, and hopefully be funneled to those channels that we talked about.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Dory, to clarify, LCAT has an E, it's ELCAT, just to clarify that, because
No.
LCAT is our neighbors to the west,
Yeah.
whom we are quite rival.
Yeah.
So ELCAT.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's unintentional.
That's good that you pointed that out.
Did that.
Good to know.
Most people call us El Gato.
Do they call you El Gato now?
El Gato. Okay.
Have we got for you?
Okay, thank you. That was comprehensive and awesome and exciting. And we'll keep working on it. This is actually a good connection into the new business. We'll be working with Mr. Quimby. Mr. Quimby wanted to be here today, could not be here today, scheduled day off. And but the school committee had on Monday voted to approve placing Mr. Quimby on the school building committee. He's been helping us behind the scenes anyway. It makes sense to have him as part of this body. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Crucial, maybe to call for a vote or a motion to move that Mr. Quimby be placed on the school building committee.
Did we already do that?
Well, school committee did, but the school building committee did not.
Is there a motion to place Mr. Quimby on the SBC?
So,
Which one? Uniform.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
second.
Seconded.
Okay.
So it is written, so
Any-
it shall be done.
Any further discussion? Okay, no further discussion. I need to do a roll call vote. I'm a yes. Mr. Crucial?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Lonergan?
Yes.
This is in the direction of my sheet. Mr. Fenny?
Yes.
I gotta pick my daughter. I'll leave the adjournment to you.
Okay. Ms. Marjan Boucher?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Did I miss anybody? Okay, I think with the yeses, that motion carries, and Mr. Quimby will be excited to have another commitment on his calendar. And since he's not here, if we have other projects.
Do we want to sign it too?
Certainly sign them. I don't know if there are other questions. There was a lot of information shared. Any other questions? If not, we have an email that we're going to get active.
That's right.
If you have a question down the road and you want to send it to the email, we will get an answer to you. With that, then I will take a motion to adjourn. Nope, we do
Are
have,
we going to get another meeting date on the calendar, or are we gonna do that outside of this meeting?
we could do it inside this meeting if you'd
How
like.
far out do you have, you're
I
thinking?
don't think we'll wanna meet.
Yeah, we should plan it today.
Sorry.
Kind of anticipating.
You want to meet in June again?
I know the 4 meetings we've already established
Okay.
is not enough for us.
You guys wanna do one of those on the same day, so you're plugged in the same day? Like earlier, or
They're going to do
does it not matter?
visiting virtually.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so probably.
What'd you have in mind? Did you have a date?
Not necessarily, you don't have a typical rhythm of your meetings like.
For a school committee?
We had been doing Wednesdays, but we just eclipsed all the Wednesdays in June.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Okay.
Yeah, it's true.
You want to, maybe it's easier to look at, you shoot out some dates and.
Let's do that. Let's
Okay.
have our group discuss. Maybe we come up with some proposed dates for you
Okay.
folks. Make sure that's
Committee, that way we're not
working with your
holding.
availability. Get something in
Okay.
stone.
Is your hope to have an in-person meeting or virtual?
Yeah.
I just was curious what you.
Yeah, I think it could be either. I think that for us, the real priority is that to get you all working with us. As we said at the very beginning, you actually have a lot of power over this. So you're less advisory and more decisive.
Right.
So we want to be able to meet with you monthly, pretty regularly.
Right.
All the way through the project, until the end of SD at least, then maybe it changes. So like the third week of June would be the general window we'd be looking for. That'll give us time to come to you with existing conditions information, envisioning
We have a
information.
visioning
Yeah, I think it's always nice if we can do an in-person meeting and then
If
if somebody
you,
can't,
if you
maybe they
wanted
can
to
join us
send-
virtually.
Hybrid with the.
It's
hybrid
nice.
speakers.
Hybrid is a nice option, especially in summer when people are gonna travel.
we're hybrid right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that way people can
I
still.
would say to have the hybrid or the virtual aspect, just so that we get more
Exactly,
participation.
yeah, you want to be able to be flexible.
Can do before that, the same day?
But it is nice to meet.
I'm just thinking,
Look how much more productive this meeting was then, you know?
Yeah.
The vision.
Zoom is sometimes hard.
Other rooms, they're gonna go.
The week of the. Or
You wanna go to
last
the-
week, last week.
Oh, the town council.
That gives
We
us a
still have the
little more
29th
window.
for visioning.
Oh, that's some visioning things too,
Yeah.
all the Wednesdays.
We might have a little bit more built up
They've
by
been
the
doing it.
last week.
Yeah,
That was the 28th.
It's
Tuesday.
looking good.
That would be great.
That's, I mean, when you get into the week of the 27th, our
That's Tuesday the
schedule
28th.
opens up a little bit. I can't speak for everybody else.
Tuesday the 28th?
Or your end,
What's that?
your end.
Yeah, so the other
Is
schedules.
this in person or is this a Zoom thing?
You can we'll hybrid.
I'm just thinking, did you wanna do it before,
They wanna do it at the end.
on the 22nd, like before the 29th?
No, they wanna do it on the
Separate.
28th, good.
No, I'm saying just so
That
that,
might be challenging for Steve, the 28th.
Not close here.
Yeah,
When's good?
yeah, I think.
Well, I mean, let's look at the 22nd, do a virtual or a hybrid. We had been meeting, we can roll it back to, we had been looking at it like a 3:30, or we could even do a 3, and that gives people a time if they're in person to get to wherever they're gonna go for the virtual visioning.
If you guys were virtual, because we know that if you've got to be.
I know it sounds confusing.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna say
So you
the
guys are gonna be
following week
virtual
is,
for that one.
yeah, both Christian and I are going to the
So
same
the
conference
27th,
out
the week of the
town.
27th is better.
We'll zoom in on the 22nd, but
Okay, so
yeah, that last week.
Steve, is Monday better than Tuesday on the 27th versus 28th?
Neither are great, but I can adapt.
No, like how, is your plan to like have like an hour-long meeting? Or do you anticipate it would be longer than that? In all honesty, I just, so we know.
I would say an hour for that next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we will have been through the building, we could report on the educational programming, the start of educational
we do.
visioning, and the existing.
Town council might,
Close it out
you may have something that, does town council meet on the 28th?
Is there anything wrong with the 29th?
That's a Wednesday.
Visioning.
So we don't.
Yeah, it's the same issue, I mean, we could hybrid it.
Yeah, 28th,
Monday would be good.
3 o'clock.
For us.
So we did today, 3:45?
Yeah, we did 3:45 because we didn't know how long MSBA was gonna take in the,
Right.
we went back-to-back meetings.
Oh, you did?
Of the two, Monday would probably be better, because there is, for some reason, a council meeting that would be on a Tuesday, so.
So Monday the 27th
Okay.
at 3:30. You guys, our school committee meeting?
It's 3:30.
Not on the, our June meetings are the 6th and the 21st.
3 o'clock on the 27th?
Yeah.
Does that work for everyone?
Yes, actually.
Do you wanna do 3 o'clock? Okay. Does that work for everybody? Okay. Bruce, Joe, you still with us?
You woke me up, Gordon.
Gotcha.
No, Monday, the 27th, 27th at 3 o'clock works for me.
Okay, beautiful. It'll be hybrid, so you can still be wherever
Although we'd
you
like
are.
to see your pretty face, Bruce.
Right.
All right. Thank you so much. Now I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
All right.
I printed them. I'm gonna hand out some
Got a motion to adjourn with
info.
Second.
any seconds?
Second.
Bruce second, okay. All right, and I have to do our roll call. I'm a yes. Ms. Brown? I'm going the other way now.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Dunn?
Oh, we should hold out a little longer.
Okay. So we're saying you're going to abstain?
No, yes is good.
Okay. Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson? Mr. Crucial is now gone. Ryan, I already got yours, right? Mr. Fenny?
Yes.
And Ms. Martin Boucher.
Yes.
It was
Sorry.
ELTS.
We're
It looks
adjourned.
like I'm the director of curriculum of the high school.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time.